Just outside Austin, Texas, there's a school called the Wizard Academy, and I'm headed there now to speak with magician, YouTube star, and longtime friend Brian Brushwood about his career in magic.
I want to talk about scam school and teaching magic on the internet. There is an entire generation of young magicians who started learning magic, not in a magic shop, not in books, but like watching your show and learning magic on YouTube. I mean, how does that play out over the next 20 years?
Man, I don't know. We started scam school before it was decided that magic was an okay subject to learn from the internet, or from YouTube specifically. And there are still pockets of people who dispute that. The other day I asked a question on Twitter. I said, hey, is there anyone out there who still feels like people who learn from YouTube aren't real magicians, whatever that means? And I was surprised at some of the folks who chimed in. We were like, yeah, but you're doing it for free. Just anyone can learn it. And it's like, of course, you could always get books at the library for free. My guess is you didn't buy your first magic kit. My guess is it was given to you for free as a gift by your parents. You didn't earn any of that. The way you earn the right to be called a magician is by investing the time, energy, and effort to learn the skills of the trade and to represent the craft well. I understand the abject fear. You're afraid when you stumble across a video on the internet that explains how a magic trick is done. You're afraid, oh, does this diminish my performance of this thing? Right. And in fact, you and I talked about this because there came a time when I was like, I really want to teach Crazy Man's Handcuffs, because there's so many tutorials out there. None of them are credited appropriately. None of them have advice from the folks who made it all possible. Let's at least do it right. And so I reached out to Michael Amar, but I knew that that's one of your favorite, it's one of the best tricks ever. And I've seen you do it so much up close that I felt this need to be like, you know, is this gonna tweak our friendship here a bit?
No, I mean, that's a great example, because like that piece, like I love that trick. And that's the second trick I ever learned. But it's a great second trick for someone to learn, because with that trick it can really look like magic. And here's where I stand on this right now. When you do a piece of really good magic for someone, you get to see a side of humanity that is hidden from view most of the time, right? You get this astonished joy, and you know, they don't show that to anybody, you know. Like I remember on my first college tour, I was going up to a group of football players after practice, and I started doing magic for them, and they didn't want anything to do with it. And then the magic happened, and they just started jumping around like little kids, and like they wanted me to come sit with them at the dinner table, you know. And like
magic has that power.
When else does that happen? So my point is, like, I wish everybody could have that experience. Like, as a magician, you learn that one of the best ways to become, like, to find wonder and astonishment yourself is to give it to other people. One of the things I've noticed with other magicians is that they often have other interests that could have been careers, but for some reason, this is what they chose. You know, like, you could have been anything.
Sure.
Why this?
There was a time I was working a day job at Dell. I was doing high-end customer service, which in the world of working for the man was not a bad gig. I wanted to work in 3D modeling and animation. I wanted to be in the video games business. I also knew that it seemed like I had an aptitude for performing magic. Whenever I did stuff at the local club, it was well received. And there came this moment that I wrote a list of my natural gifts, and I figured out which ones mattered to which job. And it seemed like ability to stand up in front of a crowd and tell a joke, that's relevant if you want to be a magician. It's not relevant if you want to model an arm flopping or a gun shooting or whatever, right? You know, the ability to, you know, be creative, take ownership, have autonomy, tell my own story, listen to other people, connect with them, be clever in ways that would surprise and delight. Some of these mattered in the field that I thought I wanted to do, but most of them, mostly what I needed to do if I was going to do 3D modeling and animation, was be the kind of person who could sit in a chair for 20 hours straight, totally alone, trying to get a flame effect exactly right. And it occurred to me that if for no other reason I needed to quit my day job to get it out of my system. I couldn't be that person who always wondered what might have been. So as a direct result of that audit, that assessment, it was like, I'm going to give it 1 year, and then I'll go back to the day job, and I'll work really hard, and I'll do really well at it, and I'll never have to wonder what might have been, because I at least tried.
I think there are so many people who have that, whether it's being a professional magician or anything. It's like there's two options. Either you can keep doing what you're doing, or you can jump off the cliff.
You know, that thought actually came from a gig that I had. There was a small technology company that wanted a magician to do 30 minutes on their corporate party out on a houseboat on Lake Travis. And so I went and did it. And this was a very similar group of people to the people I worked with at my day job. And I took a personal day to do it. I was really excited, one of my first big gigs. And I found out that the entire time I was performing, there was somebody in the back of the room who had grown up in the circus. He was familiar with a lot of this stuff, and the dude was just holding court. I would do a trick, they would run to the back, they would ask, how was it done? And this guy would just, you know, in a very snide, condescending way, explain, oh, it's just this, it's just that, or whatever. And that was fascinating to me, because I couldn't understand how somebody who had ever been on the inside of magic would just sit there and crap all over the methods and ruin somebody's show, literally while it's happening.
Right.
And then I projected myself 40 years into the future. I imagined being in my late 50s, still working at this technology job. And I imagined sitting there in the back of the room as some illusionist got up there and did all the same tricks that I did when I was young. And yet he was the one getting the applause and I wasn't. Right. And for a brief moment, I thought, oh, I understand how that jealousy could take over. I understand how you would just hunger to feel above whatever's happening in front of you. And I'm like, I don't ever want to be that. I don't ever want to be that guy who's wrapped in naked jealousy and gets the cheap thrill out of crapping on someone else's act. And so that's a big reason why I quit the day job.
I love that thought. I think, you know, like we both sort of throw ourselves at this job, you know, like there's not a lot of downtime.
Sure.
But for me, I don't ever, like I'm relatively young and someday I'll be old. And when I'm old, I don't want to wish I was still young again. I want to just enjoy being old.
Yeah.
And so it's like, there's so much I want to do. I want to do it now. So when I get to be older, I can just enjoy that.
Well, and that's the thing is, chronologically speaking, so when I was in 6th grade, I discovered the power of time travel. Now, it wasn't very good power. At first, I could only teleport 10 seconds in the future. And the way they did it is I said, I'm going to teleport 10 seconds in the future, and when I get there, I'll have the memory of the intervening seconds. And go. 2, 3, 4, and then 10. And I'm like, holy shit, it worked. I mean, it worked as well. And then I had that dark thought, like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to teleport straight to being 90 years old right before I die. And I'm going to have all the memories in there. And I made the decision in that moment. And I've never forgotten that. 6th grade, sitting in West Memorial Junior High, I made the decision to teleport because I'm going to end up at that moment. There will be some few last seconds before I die. And in a rush, like Slaughterhouse 5, I'm going to look back and know the story of everything that happened in between. It's like my life is a gift I am trying to give my older, dying version of myself to look back upon.